Good morning, crocheters. This is Karen Whooley, and I'm so excited to welcome you to episode 6 of Coffee and Crochet with Karen podcast. I can't believe it's November. It's so crazy. I just wanted to tell you right at the top of this video that I had already recorded all of this. And for some reason, my computer decided it wasn't going to record anything past 50 seconds of it. So I'm starting again, and I'm starting from the beginning. It's crazy. It's already a crazy start to November. I don't know about you guys, but we are definitely feeling the fall weather. It's very cold. I think today right now it says it's 56, so that's really not that cold. But this morning it was really cold. It was in the low 40s. Later this week we're supposed to get below freezing. So it's definitely winter is trying to rear its head here. Let's go ahead and get started. I have so much to share. So let's get started with what's new in the studio. Okay, so you probably are all realizing I am wearing a new shawl, and I'm going to take this off here for a second. This is going to be released next week, November 14th. This is called Thankful, and it is a side-to-side shawl. So the center or the main field, what I call the main field, is in this copper penny color, is worked side to side, and then you apply the edging afterwards. And I do that on purpose because I like to have the option that if you want to make it a little bigger or smaller, you can do the edging in a way that it allows you to add a few more stitches or take away a few stitches. Now, the cool thing about this shawl, and if you look at the center, I have this really cool increase at the point so that it makes the edge of the shawl open up properly, and I really like how that turned out. I love shell stitches with double crochets between them. I really love this pattern for the edging. So again, this pattern is coming out on Tuesday, November 14th, which is next week. If you're a subscriber to my newsletter, make sure you watch for the newsletter next week, because there'll be a 35% off coupon in the newsletter next week when I announce this release. So if you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe to my newsletter. And also, I forgot to say at the beginning of the video that if you aren't subscribed to this channel, make sure you subscribe here too. Hit the thumbs up and hit that bell so that you'll be notified every time I upload a new podcast. With this shawl, I've mentioned this before, I tend to wear my shawls, especially ones that are more of a shawlette size, as a cowl. And I like that this one allows me to do that. And I really am not a person who wears a lot of oranges and browns, but I really love this colorway. This copper penny, it's from Nanette Wake Studio. I had to stop and think about it for a second. Nanette Wake Studio in her sock white yarn. I cannot remember what she calls it. I want to say it's merino nylon is what she calls it. But it's so soft. And there's a little bit of texture in the stitches. I don't know if you saw that when I was lifting it up. It's all double crochets and crossed double crochets. So if you know how to do a crochet and you're a beginner, you can do this shawl. A crossed double crochet is only skipping a stitch, making a double crochet, and then going back to the stitch you skipped and making a double crochet. And it just makes the double crochets cross like this. So if you've never done that before, this is a great way to learn how to do that. So I'm very excited about this shawl, and I'm really excited to show you the next thing that's new in the studio is something I think I mentioned last week that I was waiting for. Got it finally last week. It's called the Rhinebeck Doodle deck, Doodle card deck. Now you probably remember me from the first episode. I had this one, which was the Seattle Doodle deck. I had to get the Rhinebeck, and not that I have ever been to Rhinebeck. I'm not a person who will travel that far for an event, even if it's the most popular thing in the world. But I wanted this deck for the socks. I wanted it for the sweater and the sheep and this. Can you see the skein of yarn right here? And the little balls of yarn. There's 24 different stitch cards in here. They're all 24 stitches. So if I wanted to, I could mix and match this deck and this deck and make my own unique things, because every stitch pattern has 24 stitches no matter what. So I'm really excited to work on that. I also wanted to mention that this one I'm going to be using is a new project for this Sasquatch. I'm going to make my daughter a scarf with Sasquatch on it. So be watching for that. That'll be coming soon. Anyway, the other thing I wanted to mention that's new in the studio is, if you got my newsletter yesterday, I announced the Stitch of the Month Club that is going to happen starting January 1st here at Karen Whooley Designs. It's going to launch November 15th. So if you're also interested in that, make sure you sign up for my newsletter, because the newsletter subscribers always get the news first. I will talk about it next week here on the video, but next week, if you want to get in on it before you watch the video, make sure you check that out. And newsletter subscribers always get a discount. You guys know that. So make sure you check that out and make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. So that is something I want to show you really quick too, is I finished the squares for the sample that I'm going to just show them like that. There's 9 different stitch patterns, and they're not all really super simple patterns. They're all different patterns. There's some of them are different. I mean, they're different stitches. I'm just going to show you a few here. They're all different stitches. There's one that's a little more open. Here it is. That has a little more definition to it. I think I could show them all to you. Yeah, they're all here. So I'm going to be working on some of the videos for the joining and stuff like that. But what's basically going to happen is I'm going to open registration on the 15th. You have until December 31st to join us, because the way this is going to work is every first of the month I'm going to drop the next pattern. So January 1st I'll drop the first stitch, and every month after that through September I will drop all of the stitches, and then you're going to be crocheting those stitches during the month. You're going to be getting a video of how to do those stitches. You're also going to have a 30-minute to 60-minute video with me. Be answering questions if you need me to show you a different way, something like that. I'm going to try to make sure that it's no longer than 30 minutes, but if we need the full 60, we will definitely do that. All the stitches will be not only, what do we call it? They'll not only be videoed, but I'm going to try to reverse them for the left-handed people. So make sure if you're left-handed, check it out as well. And then we will talk about, edging them and joining them and putting the edging on the blanket. You get to choose your size. I'm really excited about this. So I hope you'll at least, if you've got the newsletter, there's a button there that you can click on, or not a button, there's a sentence there that's highlighted. It's a link. If you click on it, it will register you that you really want to know, be one of the first to know, because I'm going to send a special newsletter to those people who are super interested right up front. And there's a possibility I may do a little webinar style Zoom call to talk about it a little bit more before registration closes. So I'm giving you until the end of the year, because I want to make sure that if somebody wants to join but might want to wait till they get a little Christmas money or something like that, you can still join. But it will open the 15th. Okay, let's talk about current projects. Okay, so I'm really excited to show you guys this. I'm so excited. Here we go. Look at that. I have the back of my sweater done. I'm going to back up here so you can see it. So there's the sweater. There are the armholes. I finally got them where I want them to be. I'm so excited. So the back is done. I am going to be working on the front, first front, because this is going to be a cardigan, remember, probably later today. Get them started. Hopefully by next week, I will actually have a front to show you. That's my goal, at least one of the fronts. I'd like to have both of them, but I can't guarantee that. But I'd really like to have both of them. Now that I have the armhole set up, that's not going to be a problem. It's going to be the V-neck that's going to be a little bit of an issue, but I can deal with that. That is not going to be too hard. It's just a matter of making sure that the decreases for the armhole and the decreases for the V-neck are going to work out, because you have to have the same number of stitches on both shoulders, on the front and on the back. So I just have to make sure I don't mess that up. Anyway, okay, so that is the first project. I'm really excited that I got that far. The second project is, this is for my son for Christmas. Some of you have seen this, some of you haven't. When I was in Loveland last April, ModeKnit Yarn was there, their yarn dyer, and they had this Stars Hollow Stories, colors based on our love of the Gilmore Girls. And my son is a huge Gilmore Girl fan. I cannot even tell you. So this was the last one she had on the shelf when I got it. These are the colors. This is Rory right here. I already wound it because I wanted to see if it would do something that I wanted it to do. It's not going to work for my son, so I've got something else in mind. But then this is Rory. This is Luke. This is Emily, Suki, Lorelai, and the Dragonfly in. So if you're a Gilmore Girl fan, I'm not sure if she's still dyeing these. You might want to check out our website. It's ModeKnitYarn.com, ModeKnitYarn.com. This is her Mode Work fingering yarn. It's 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon. And each one of the mini skeins is 20 grams and 80 yards. So this whole set here together is 480 yards. And then I bought to go with it this pewter colorway. It's the same base, the 80-20 merino nylon superwash. And it's called Pewter's the colorway. Same base, just in a full hank. On this one, it's 100 grams for 400 yards. So that's going to be more than enough than what I'm gonna need to make this scarf. Now, hopefully my son is not watching. I don't believe he watches these videos, but if he does, he's in trouble. So he's going to know what he's getting. Anyway, so he's a huge Gilmore fan. I can't even tell you all the Gilmore-isms he uses. He's watched the show, I think at least 5 times, probably close to 7 now. He was telling me the other day he needs to watch The Year in a Life, the videos for that, or the episodes for that. So I don't know where he's at, but he when he was in school, that was his background noise, so he got to really know the story. So when I saw that, I had to get that for him. Okay, so one other project I wound the yarn for, and this is, and I'm hoping you can see it on the screen. Oh, this is actually better than the first time I recorded this. This is called, this is Jimmy Sock from HauteKnit Yarns, and the colorway is, now that's what I call pink, and it's very neon pink. Isn't that amazingly neon? I mean, it's not, the screen is not giving me justice on this, but this is neon pink. And I'm going to be making him the sock head hat. I don't know if you've seen this. It's a free pattern on Ravelry. It's designed by Kelly McClure. I have made this hat for my son, and I've made it for someone else. Oh, one of my nephews got this in Seahawks colors, and I'm making it for my son-in-law in his stocking. It's knit, and he loves beanies, so I'm not going to make it quite so loose and sloppy in the back. It's going to be more fitted to his head, but I like this pattern, and I know my gauge works really well for that, so that's what this is going to be. And so I have 2 projects that are personal, and I actually have 4 total that I need to get done for Christmas. These 2, I'm excited because this weekend my husband and I are going on a little trip. We'll be about 3 hours away, and we are going to be driving. So I am going to have car time to work on some personal projects. I might bring the sweater if I am not quite finished with the front. If I get one of the fronts done and not the second, I won't bring it. But if I get partial through the second front, I'll probably bring it so I can finish it. But with roughly 6 hours of car time, I am going to have a lot of time to work on something, because my husband likes to be the driver, so I get to which is fine with me. I like to crochet and knit. So I always bring a knit and a crochet project with me when I travel like this, so that if I get tired of crocheting, I can switch to knitting. Helps with, you know, repetitive stress stuff, but I'm really excited to get started on both of those. So hopefully next week, one of those will be done. Both of them are going to be really quick projects. It's just a matter of getting started, and I'm hoping to get this wound and started a little bit tonight as well. So anyway, so those are my personal projects. I have another project that I'm going to be working on that I'll show you next week. I don't want to show it quite yet, but I have another project that's coming. So let's talk about the topic of the week. This week's topic of the week is from my good friend Andy Graves. She is another crochet designer. You might know her as Mama's Two Hands. She asked me to do a topic on weaving in ends. And I thought the best way to show weaving in ends is just to launch into a little video here. But before I do that, I want to talk about weaving in ends. A lot of people think that working over the ends, crocheting over them, is enough. And in some cases, yes, that could be enough. But what happens over time is that if you don't create some sort of friction that locks the fibers, those ends eventually come out. And in some cases, it's maybe not something that you're washing, like it could be an amigurumi or something like that. That's okay to just work over the ends, because all the ends are going to be on the inside. You're not going to manipulate it a lot. But if it's a blanket, if it's a garment, if it's anything you're going to wear, a hat, cowl, shawl, whatever, you need to actually weave in, or what some people call bury the ends. They need to be secured. And I'm going to teach you how in this video to secure them the way my nonna taught me when she taught me to crochet. And if you do it right, no one's going to see the way the ends go. Now in this video, I use a cotton yarn, and I did that on purpose because the cotton will show you at the end where the ends are woven, because it's a little bulkier. I didn't do it as careful as I normally would if I was doing something in cotton, like a dishcloth or something like that, because I wanted you to see where the ends are being buried. But if you do this right, you won't have to worry about anybody knowing where those ends are. Now, this is not a foolproof way of doing things, because after a lot of manipulation or washings and stuff, sometimes a little tiny bit of the end will come out, but it's usually just a little tiny bit, and you just clip it, and usually you never see it again after that. So I recommend this way. I've been doing it since I was 7 years old. And for example, I made one of those rippled blankets that was really popular in the 70s and back in 1979 for my grandparents. And I was 12, so bear with me, I was 12. And so I wasn't real patient with weaving in ends, and there were a ton of ends. It was one of those ripples where the main color was 4 rows, and then you changed to 4 different colors, 2 rows each. So I had a ton of ends. And it probably took me over a week to weave in all those ends, because I'd get bored. And my mom did some of them, but most of them I did. And I will tell you, none of those ends came out. My grandmother used that blanket. When she died in 1992, I got the blanket back. Those ends did not come out. So, and I'm going to try to post a picture here of that blanket so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But I'm going to go ahead and roll the video, and then I'll chat with you a little bit more. Now, I have a way of weaving in ends that's very different from other people. My grandmother taught me how to do this back in 1974, 75, and I've been doing it ever since. And with this particular technique, I have Afghans that I made when I was like 12 years old, and they're 30 plus years old, almost 40 years old now. And I've washed them, my grandmother used them, and they have never had an end pop out. So I have been asked many times to show how to do this, and I decided to finally make a video. So let me first show you how it looks before we get started. And on this particular swatch, I wove in the end right here on the edge. And if you look at it, you can kind of see that it's there. It's a little bit bulkier than farther down, but if you look at it at a distance, you really can't tell that much that it's there. Maybe the bumps on the sides of the double crochets are gone. But other than that, it looks pretty good. And when you get really close, it's hard to tell. That's what's going on right there. Now, when you're working on a flat piece, a lot of times you're going to put an edge right over that, and there's not that much bulk right there. You'll notice it's pretty much the same size as the rest of the piece. So you can crochet right over the top of weaving in your ends and not have to worry about it. So let's get started with how to weave in an end. And the first thing you want to remember is that you need to leave a decent size end. I recommend 6 to 8 inches. This is a little bit longer. This is probably closer to like 16 inches. But I wanted to make sure I had enough to show you what's going on. The first thing you want to do is you want to put your yarn on your hook, or not on your hook, on your needle. But before we do that, I want to talk about using needles when you're weaving in ends. My personal preference are these metal needles with the bent edge, and you'll see as I am working on weaving in this end that the reason why I like the bent end, it allows me to get where I need to go very easily. The one thing I want to recommend to you too is that if you're going to pick a needle to weave in ends, don't pick plastic. The reason being, plastic is usually done in a mold, and when they unmold it, there's seams on either side. And they, as much as they try to make them nice and smooth, there's always a little bit of a rough edge there. And what tends to happen is those rough edges catch on the fibers of your yarn. And then what happens is it pulls, and it can ruin or distort your fabric. And I've had a lot of mishaps with that, so I don't recommend anything but steel needles. You can use any size. You always want to pick a size that works with the size yarn you're using. I happen to be using worsted weight right now, so I'm using a big tapestry needle, but if you're using fingering weight or even lace weight, you might need to go with a smaller needle. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my yarn on the needle. And always make sure there's a little bit of a tail there so it doesn't fall off. And then what I do is I call this the 1, 2, 3 method. I don't know what my grandmother called it. I just call it that because I use 3 steps as I'm weaving in. And we're going to get started. So you're going to start as close as you can to where the yarn is coming out. And you'll notice here's the knot that ends the swatch. And that's where I want to get started. Now, you're always going to work your yarn through the rows of the fabric, never across the stitches. Now, the reason you don't want to go across the stitches is a couple reasons. One is that it makes it easier to buckle your fabric, and nobody wants that. And then the second thing is that it's more visible when you're going across the fabric rather than going down through the rows. So let's get started. First thing you're going to do is 1, go underneath the first strand of yarn, and you'll notice that my needle is going right underneath it. So I'll do that again, right underneath, so you can see the needle is going right through underneath it. And you're going to do 1, and then you're going to do that again for number 2. Here's number 2. So both strands the needle is going right underneath them. Now number 3 is different. Number 3, you're actually going to find the next strand, and you're going to use the tip of the needle to split it. And you can see right there where I actually get a little closer, I actually split the fibers of the yarn. We're going to do that again. Underneath 1, underneath 1, underneath 2, split number 3. Underneath 1, I split that one. Underneath 1, underneath 2, split number 3. Now when you do this, I just pulled everything out. Let's fix that. 1, 2, and split number 3. Now when you do that, I'm going to leave the needle like that for a second. You want to go at least an inch across. This looks like probably almost 2 inches across. And with wool yarns, that's usually good enough. 1.5 to 2 inches is more than enough. You want to go at least 1 inch, but 1.5 looks great. If you're using a yarn that's slick, like maybe a nylon or a silk or something along those lines where the yarn tends to slide, you're going to want to go 2, 3, 4 inches maybe. So this is good enough for the wool yarn that I'm using. So Once I've got it in there, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to pull through. So I'm going to pull through just like that. And then what I do is I kind of pull it a little tighter and then I work it. And you'll notice you can kind of see where it's at, but it's not too visible at this point. So now the biggest question I get with this is, why do we split the yarn? And let me tell you, the reason being is that yarn actually consists of fibers. And when especially with wools, they kind of want to stick to each other. So the way my grandmother described it is that the yarns want to lock into themselves. So by splitting the yarn, you're splitting some of the fibers and you're making them rub against each other. And by rubbing against each other, they tend to want to be sticky, and then the yarn won't pull through. I'm trying to pull my fingers apart, and they're so tight right now, I can't pull my fingers apart. Same idea with the yarn. So now, this isn't finished quite yet. Now we want to go back the way we just came to finish up the weaving in of the ends. So first thing you want to do is look for the yarn where you just split that strand, and instead of splitting it this time, you're going to go right underneath it. That's 1, 2, and then I'm going to do 3 at the same time. Right here is the strand that I wove in, and I want to try to split that strand if I can see it. Now, all the time you're not going to be able to see it, but when you do see it, if you can do it, split it. So I split this guy. Oops. Now I'm going to go under 1, under 2. Now I can't see the yarn, so I'm going to do 3 right here. And then 1. And then this is one that was split before. I'm going to go 2 underneath that one, and then here's 3. I'm going to split the yarn that I wove through. And then the last I'm going to do is I'm going to go 1, 2, and then I'm going to make the split as close as I can to where the yarn started. And then I'm going to pull that through. And then I'm going to work it a little. And sometimes you have to work it a little more. And then you're going to cut. Now to cut the yarn, what I do is I tug it just a little bit to make it pucker. And then I cut the yarn. And then what I do, you can see the tails right there. I just kind of work it so that the tail gets tucked inside. And now you can see, you can kind of see where it is, but at a distance, it's a little puffy, but not too bad. I would, on this particular piece, I would probably go a little closer to the edge. I just wanted to make sure that you could see what I was doing. And usually I will work right on the edge, kind of like I did on this side. You'll see that right here, worked right on the edge. But I wanted you to be able to see where I was going here. So you can see it's a little bit puffier here. But as you work it, and usually after I'm done, I sit here and I'll play with it for a little bit. And after I block it, that'll disappear. In fact, it's already starting to disappear. If you look, oops, I'm gonna pull that down. There you go. It's already starting to disappear. Now, if you're working in the round, there's a couple things you want to remember. You're always going to want to try to stop the yarn at the end of the row or round, excuse me, so that all of your seams are going to be, or all of your woven in ends are going to be right down the middle of the back. Usually that's why when you're working in the round, wherever the seam is, that is the back side of your hat or glove or whatever you're working. And again, you're going to work down and back. You're never going to go across, because again, you're going to see it a lot more than you see it right here. And the other thing I want to mention that I forgot to mention at the beginning is that when you have your tails on a flat piece, you always want to make sure they're on the outside edges. You never want to try to do it in here. The chance of seeing your seam is so much easier, or not your seam, the chance of seeing the woven in end is so much bigger, even on the wrong side or on the right side of the fabric, if you do it in the middle of the yarn, or in the middle of the project rather than on the edge. So that's just a big tip that I want to make sure that you guys got. And that's how I weave in ends. Now, okay, I hope that video was helpful. One of the things I want to mention is that I just really want to reiterate that there's two reasons why you want to weave in your ends. The first is that when you manipulate your whatever the project is, the one that you crocheted over is going to work its way out. It's just naturally going to do that. There are very few yarns that don't, but they will. It will like worm its way out if you just work over them. The second reason is that I mentioned before, you need to lock the fibers. And as you saw in the video, I always try to split the fibers as I'm weaving in the ends. And what that does is that forces the fibers to kind of rub against each other like this. And eventually they'll lock and they won't come apart. Now, like I said, it's not completely foolproof because you will get a little bit that comes out once in a while and you just clip it, but it's so short, it doesn't worm the whole thing out because you're locking it into itself. And I tug, I mentioned this in the video, I tug it a little and I clip it, and then it kind of pulls itself back in after I manipulate the fabric. Sometimes it was too much of a tug, and then it'll, as with manipulating the fabric, it pulls out past one of the loops that you're going under, so I'll have to clip it again, or after washing it a couple times I may have to do that, but it will never completely come out. Now the other thing I want to recommend to you is that you never ever 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 tie knots when you have two ends together. The reason why, and this is probably not so common these days, but when I was teaching classes early on in the late 90s and early 2000s, I had a friend who made this beautiful colorful blanket, different colors, and she just knotted them and clipped them really close. And back then, all of our washing machines had an agitator. Now, most washing machines that you buy new these days don't have an agitator, although I did see some at Lowe's not too long ago. So the agitator is not a thing of the past yet. I know the front loads usually don't have them, but the uprights do. There are still some that have the agitator. Well, she washed this blanket, and when she pulled it out, one of the knots got caught in the agitator and it yanked as it was doing the spin cycle, and it destroyed the blanket because it just pulled the yarn and it just, it just rippled, and the yarn had this big loop coming out of it. And even all the stretching in the world, because of the way crochet knots are made, there's no way to easily put those back in without ripping out the whole blanket and starting at that point forward. So never, ever, ever make knots. It also gives you a little bit of bulk there, and it's not finished. If you make a knot and you clip it, it's not a neat way of doing things. Now, again, if you're doing an amigurumi and you're doing it that way, it's all tucked inside, no one's going to see it. But if it's a blanket or if it's a garment or a shawl or something like that, don't do it, because it's just not a way to finish something finely. So I highly recommend that you use the technique I used in the video. It's the way my grandmother taught me. I noticed that a lot of knitting designers are teaching it this way now. So it's something that's tried and true. And at least as far as I'm concerned, it's the best way to do it. So, but if you see something else that someone's weaving in and end differently, try it. It might work better for you. But what I can say is that you don't want to work over it. You want to just weave it in. I know it's extra work, but I know some of you are probably going, "Oh, Karen, I don't want to do this," but I really want you to. You'll be thanking me later when you have a project that's 5 years old and the ends have not come out of it. Okay, so let's move on to stories. Okay, so this is the last story I have in my arsenal. So you guys, if you have a story you want to share with me, it can be about, learning to crochet, someone that taught you to crochet, it can be about a lesson you learned with the project, or yarn, or dyeing, or whatever it is that is something in the crochet realm. Please send me the story. You can either leave it in the comments, or you can send it to me at comments, COMMENTS, at KarenWhooley.com. So make sure you put that S in comments, otherwise I won't get it. I have that email especially for my YouTube channel. If you would like to leave me a story, or you want to comment on something and don't want to do it publicly on YouTube, you can always send me something at that email address. I would love to hear from you. This week's story comes from Linda, who's Brat's Mom 6749. She actually posted this on episode 4. I had 2 stories on that one, so I saved this one for this week. But after this week, I don't have any more, so please send me something. So Linda says, "Hi Karen. My dear Aunt Josie taught me some crochet basics. She never told me the names of the stitches, but would demonstrate them. When she was dying, I spent an afternoon next to her bedside and pulled out a small crochet project, a prayer cloth pocket cross. That's a tongue twister. Prayer cloth pocket cross. It's a small rectangle with popcorn stitches in the form of a cross. Her face lit up and she said, "Remember when I taught you how to crochet and I bought you that little book?" I said, "Aunt Josie, I not only remember, but I still have that little book. I'm surprised you remember. That was 60 years ago." My aunt died a couple weeks later, buried with the little prayer cloth pocket cross I made for her. She was a couple months short of her 103rd birthday. Speaking of muscle memory, in her mid to late 90s, Aunt Josie crocheted tons of ponchos, and she was legally blind at the time. What a gal. So I'm impressed. Not only was she legally blind in her 90s, but that the fact that she was actually crocheting in her mid to late 90s. That's nuts. My grandmother, my nonna who taught me to crochet, she was 89 and when she passed, and she had stopped crocheting years before that. I mean, she did little bits here and there, but it was mostly to help me. But she had really arthritic hands. So the fact that she could do it and not only legally blind, but the fact that she could do it at that age is incredible. And what a wonderful life to have lived. 103 almost. That's amazing. And it sounds like she was as sharp as a tack too. So that's really incredible. So thanks Linda for sharing that story. I really appreciate it. So we're going to move on to comments. So if you watched last week's video, you may have been aware of the fact that when I first uploaded the video, there was a little snafu at the point of the topic of the week, and it suddenly just disappeared. Or I don't know we can't remember if it was a green screen or something happened at that point, and you couldn't see the rest of the video. So I had to re-upload it. I had a few comments on the original, and because I re-uploaded it, I had to delete the old one, and it deleted all the comments. So I only have a few comments here. Okay, so the first one was from Renee Bryant, 9288. That's Renee. Hi, Renee. It's good to have you here watching. She says, "Thanks for sharing. Your videos are always interesting, and I'm so glad. I try to do topics that you guys are interested in. And Renee, I just want to let you know, the topic that you recommended, I am planning to do. It just probably won't be till January because I need some time to kind of research a little bit and do some samples and swatches so that I can speak intelligently about it. But I really want to do it. So probably in January, probably late January, but somewhere in January, I will definitely do that." Frances says, "Looking forward to seeing your cardie." Frances, thank you. I'm so excited the back is done. So I am hoping that you'll see more next week. That's the goal anyway. So that would be from Frances. And then the last comment is from, from Sharon, SK Hoyt, 6024. Hi, Sharon. So glad you commented. She says, your CAL sounds interesting. Might be a good way to use up some leftover yarns from previous Afghans. Yes and yes. In fact, the original time I taught this was when I was teaching at Michael's, or did this crochet along. So I was kind of teaching at Michael's, but it was a crochet along. Most people did. That's what they did. They used their leftover Red Heart or Lion Brand that we had from other classes, and that's how they did these squares. I recommend worsted weight, but because the squares have to be a particular size, I give you a stitch multiple to help you get the square the right size. So if you're using chunky yarn, or if you're using fingering weight or DK weight, you can adjust your squares to work the way they need to work for the size. So there you go. So there's one thing you can do. And then she says, "I'll think about it. I've done a couple different braided joins and would be interested in seeing how you do it. I like the idea of a stitch sampler." Me too. This is not a new braid. It's one that I don't see used very often. So I want to teach it again. I used to teach this a lot when I was teaching at Michael's. and I haven't really taught it since I stopped working for Michael's. And even at my local yarn shop when I was teaching there, I don't think I know for sure I didn't do the stitch of the month there, and I can't remember ever teaching this join. So I'm excited to do it again. It'll be fun. I'm working on videos now, so hope you'll register. And again, just as a reminder for those of you who might have come in late, is that I really am going. I am going to be opening registration on the 15th of November, which is next week, a week from today when I drop this video. So I know, of course, if you're a newsletter subscriber, there's always a discount for you guys. So make sure you check that out. And you have until the end of the year to decide to join. I'll be sending out reminders, but let me know for sure by the end of December, because on the 1st, the first pattern drops. So, and I was going to let it go until March, but now that I'm doing the videos and I'm setting it all up, if I go past January 1st, it's going to be difficult for me to have the system work the way it's supposed to. So I'm cutting it off at December 31st. So if you have any friends who may not know me and that may like to do a crochet along, make sure that you send them the link to register for the crochet along, and make sure you tell them to subscribe to the newsletter as well. So that's it for today. I'm so excited that we are at episode 6. We're getting close to double digits here, guys. But I'm having such a great time doing these for you. I hope you're enjoying them. So hope you have a great rest of your week. Have a great weekend. God bless everyone, and I will see you next time. Bye, y'all.